WTPA, let's game.
Good day, you bloody larrikins. Haha, I lied. There's actually 22 tips. Let's get started. Tip number 1. It's easy to get overwhelmed in battle, especially when there's a heap of enemies in one area. So bring a companion with you on your travels. To select the best companion, go to the abilities tab and find the ones with the best stats and give them the best equipment to suit. This way you'll have a living tank that will be able to take all the damage while you sneak around the back and help finish them off. Tip number 2. For big encampments, you might want to rally the troops and take a whole army to take the camp down. But before you leave your base, make sure to build a staging ground and hover over the top of it once you have an army built. This will allow your followers to grab food and weapons so they're ready to fight. Tip number 3. Pressing H will allow your character to auto run. This is great for traversing great distances while you're busy organising your village in the menu. Tip number 4. Sprinting on a road drains your stamina slower than sprinting on grass. If you're able to travel on the roads, do so. Tip number 5. Make sure when hunting, don't hunt all the animals in one area. Leave a few so they can repopulate. I found if you hunt them all, it takes a week or two in-game to start spawning back. Tip 6. Get cranberries as soon as you can. These berries are easy to farm and have a 30% XP bonus for skills and will power level your character. You can find them here. Tip number 7. Food stacks. This means food would last longer than if it was sitting individually in your inventory. I like to disable food rations on all storage places except for one. Your villagers will then only deposit food in that one spot and it will last longer. Tip 8. Another good food tip, get rid of the fire and smoker as soon as you possibly can. Instead of making one cooked smoked meat, you'll be able to make multiple stews with one piece of meat, therefore they'll stack and last for a long time. Tip number 9. One of the first items you'll need to really progress in the game are straps, which in the early game can be a little hard to find, but you can get these by killing bandits or going to the shops in towns, which can be bought for around 75 coin. Tip number 10. When researching higher level buildings and items, you're going to see next to it that it requires a profession like woodman, carpenter, blacksmith, etc. You can only hire these professionals from a village that you have a rating of Bellwright and that you are liberated from the brigands. Tip number 11. Some of the locations of these professions to get you started. You can get a blacksmith, weaver and farmer from Herondine, and you can get a woodsman, carpenter from Padstow, and an innkeeper and labourer from Farnsworth. These are your essentials to progress to tier 3 building and weapons. Tip number 12. When recruiting villagers, it's best to level up your standing before recruiting them. This is because the higher level standing you are, the higher max level of their skills usually is. This will make sure your village is as efficient as it can be once they've leveled up. Tip 13. Make sure to use your spare research books on your villagers. The higher the level they are in something, the more buffs that they will have in that skill. Tip number 14. The more houses you build in a village after liberating it, and more people will be there to defend the village from reclamation parties. Tip number 15. After liberating villages, you might find that you're a little bit short of the Bellwright status. The Bellwright status is what you need to recruit professional villagers. Easiest way to build the village status up is to build buildings that have the bell icon above them, like this. And when you click on it, it will also show how much standing it will give that village. Tip number 16. When getting into tier 2 and tier 3 buildings, you will need a carpenter's hammer for your villagers to be able to build them. They are no longer click to build buildings. Make sure to have a few extra of these because they will need repairing pretty quickly. I usually have 3 to 5 to spare because they're very cheap to make. Tip number 17. Be strategic when eating food. I like to use foods with buffs like XP, combat ability buffs, and then use a food that slows down hunger last. Making your food last longer means your buffs will stay around for longer. Smoked fish is a great one to start because it's minus 30% hunger rate. Tip number 18. When you're going for later game resources like iron and granite, you're most likely going to want to make an outpost. These can be easily done by building a building where you want to start the new base. Then press N, find the building and assign it to a new outpost. You will also need to assign villagers to this outpost as well, especially if it's very far away. Tip number 19. You can set up deliveries between different settlements and outposts. Go into your settlement tab, select the village you want to deliver from. So for instance, if I want iron ore from my outpost to my main base, I select my main base and request delivery from the outpost. And because I don't have food set up on my outpost, I can select the outpost and request deliveries of food from my main base. On a side note, I think the limit is 20 items per villager per day, so just keep that in mind. Tip number 20. All your settlements and outposts have different threat levels to each other, so in your smaller ones, make sure you have enough people to defend them from attack. Tip number 21. One of the best late game buildings is the mining pit. This is a great way to mine multiple ores from the same spot. When placing the pit, you will see the resources it can gather. So if you have multiple different resources together, you can mine them all at once. Tip number 22. Make sure to build a forester as soon as you can. This will replant trees that you've cut down, so you won't have to travel as far for logs and wood. If you found these tips handy, please leave us a like or consider subscribing for more, and we'll see you in the next one.
Like, comment and subscribe for more epic WTPA moments.